There has been a number of moves here in San Diego over the last few days, some big free agent signings and some major trades. The Blue Jays involved in none of it. Joined once again by Shai Davidi, Mike Wilner, Ben Nicholson-Smith, and gentlemen, the Blue Jays, as expected, are going to leave San Diego with the same roster they came here with. But their attention now seems to be drifting from signing free agents to going the trade route. Is this pretty much the best option for Alex Anthopoulos?
Well, at this point, the Blue Jays seem to think that's an area with a lot of potential for them. And the sense that you get is that they're going to target guys with 5 years of service time who are going to be free agents after the 2015 season, the sense being that perhaps they can get them at a bit of a lesser price without having to use one of their key young pitching prospects. The on-the-cusp guys like Daniel Norris, Roberto Osuna, Miguel Castro, that's prospect capital they don't want to waste. If you can use a lower-tier prospect to get the relief help, it might be better value than what's out there on the free agent market right now.
And when you look at what Luke Gregerson signed for 3 years, possibly $21 million with the incentives, Pat Neshek is getting a couple of years for a lot of money. Luke Hochevar's coming off Tommy John surgery, gets $10 million for 2 years. These prices are getting to be a little bit rich for these free agents. There's still that lower tier that the Blue Jays can go fishing in, but if you want a guy who's going to step in and be a reliable back of the bullpen arm, it almost means you have to make a trade.
Right, and I think that even though there are dozens of free agents on the relief market, you have hundreds of players that you could target in trades. You look at 7-man bullpens, 30 teams, that's a lot of different options, so Anthopoulos has a lot of choice.
Let's face it, guys, building a bullpen is not an exact science. I mean, there is a lot of luck involved. 2 years ago, the Blue Jays bullpen was supposed to be terrible. It was outstanding. Last year it was supposed to be great. It was bad. So if you're Alex Anthopoulos, how difficult is this to get the right pieces that you know, because it's a crapshoot?
You can't ever know with any relievers almost. There's only a handful of relief pitchers who are consistently good year in and year out. The Blue Jays had one of them in Casey Janssen, who's a free agent now. We haven't really heard anything about Casey. The door's open to his return, but again, Alex talking about picking up guys in trade. It's almost been like no matter who you go after, unless he's one of 8 or 10 people, you have no idea what you're going to get from him.
And I think that's the argument against spending huge money on someone like Andrew Miller or David Robertson. As good as those pitchers are, I think that committing tens of millions to those guys would come with a huge amount of risk.
Can you say Papelbon?
Yeah, that's a great example of a relief contract gone wrong. I mean, the Blue Jays have some history with B.J. Ryan in that regard. At the time, it was the biggest contract ever given to a reliever, $47 million over 5 years. B.J. Ryan was great in his first season, broke down, wasn't the same. They had to eat a lot of money to get him off the team. So there is some risk. The one thing is that you do want to have 1 or 2 stable guys in the bullpen. And as we've seen with the contracts given to Robertson, Miller, even Gregerson, the guys who perform consistently cost a ton of money, and I'm not certain that those deals would have fit in well with the Blue Jays in their contract structure right now.
And even the guys who don't perform consistently. Last year was Andrew Miller's first good year in the major leagues. First time he walked less than 4.5 guys per 9 innings. He's cashing in huge. Robertson at least has had 4 great years in a row. Gregerson's been consistent. But if it's a guy that the market loves, regardless of if he's one of those guys or not, he's making huge money.
70 good innings, that's all it takes.
The Blue Jays began the meetings by talking about how the second base position isn't something they're going to worry about. John Gibbons talked about there may not be an upgrade available today. Alex Anthopoulos said, it would be great if we could find that full-time guy at second base. Yet another one comes off the board today in D. Gordon.
Yeah, that's a great return for the Dodgers, and we're starting to see that front office begin to act. They also picked up Jimmy Rollins from the Phillies, and it's a really high bar that they set for a guy who has a lot of speed and can really impact the game that way, but doesn't have a ton of on-base ability. So I'm not certain, given that package, that the Blue Jays were ever going to be in the market for someone like him. But we heard from Scott Boras earlier today that they have had some discussion with Japanese infielder Takashi Toritani. I'm not certain that's very active right now, but that could be an option for them.
Yeah, and I think you look at the package that was given out for D. Gordon, that's a huge amount of talent. Andrew Heaney, one of the game's better pitching prospects as recently as a year ago. So if you translate that to the Blue Jays, you're starting to talk about those prime young arms that they really don't want to surrender.
Right, and it would have been, Andrew Heaney was top 12 draft pick a couple of years ago, pitched in the major leagues already. That's Daniel Norris, and it was him, and it's better than Daniel Norris, and 3 more guys. That's what it took to get D. Gordon. That's what it would have taken from the Blue Jays.
Speaking of Scott Boras, he holds court, and we're not talking 10, 15 people. We're talking hundreds of people want to hear what Scott Boras has to say. he talked today about the Tampa Bay Rays and how he's asked all the time, when are they moving to Montreal? And he likes the idea of them being in Montreal. Does his, as much as what he has to say to the media really holds a lot of water, does it with ownership? Is it something that his words that, hey, guys, what are we doing here? Let's move him to Montreal. Does it have any impact at all?
Well, I don't think it does. I think they're still optimistic about staying in Tampa Bay. But at the same time, when you have someone with that kind of a voice speaking, and he went out of his way, mind you, to talk about Montreal. He said there are 3 things about the Rays: great manager, great GM, and they should be playing in Montreal. So I think that tells you a lot. He wasn't asked about Montreal. He found a way to bring it into the discussion. And why not? As an agent, Montreal would be a more powerful market than Tampa Bay, and you could imagine that market having the capacity to hold a lot of big contracts that the Rays don't.
And Stuart Sternberg was talking just yesterday with the Tampa Bay media, talking about how he's really pushing now for that new stadium and that they need it, and they need it in a hurry. He says he's keeping the team in Tampa Bay. He's not moving it. But if no stadium gets built, he's not going to be owning the team in the next 5 or 10 years, and that may be another push forward.
Well, the Rays are really at the point now where they can really start to explore some things, because they're not limited to St. Pete anymore. They can expand into Pinellas and Hillsborough counties. They could put a stadium in a more logical spot in that area where they can really start attracting people from Tampa, because the way the Bay Area is situated, it's very difficult to get from Tampa across to St. Pete. Tampa's where the population base is. If they can put a stadium in an area where they can draw from all parts of the population, that could realistically play out better. But Scott Boras, his interest is in bringing as much money as possible into the industry, and then taking as much of that as possible and dispersing it amongst his players with his own cut, of course. So obviously he's going to be pushing for Montreal, but there are several dominoes still to fall before Montreal even becomes a realistic possibility.
I'm all in for Tampa moving to Montreal, going to the National League. And how do you guys feel about the San Diego Padres moving to the American League? Heck, let's put them in the American League East, right?
You know what? I would love to go to Montreal 3 times a year if Tampa moved there, but moving San Diego into the AL East, 3 trips down here wouldn't be so bad.
No, that would definitely work.
Ben, your thoughts on this city?
I'm all for it. Great spot, and hopefully they can at least keep the winter meetings coming here.
Well, the winter meetings were here. The Blue Jays did nothing in the way of free agent signings or trades, but as Alex Anthopoulos says, it is only December.